So I just happened to be in Astoria, Oregon when I wrote this part of the presentation. And I was looking at the Astoria Megler Bridge. It occurred to me that it's completely riddled with equilateral triangles. From what little I know about bridges, much less the longest continuous truss bridge in North America like this one, efficient use of materials and reduction of weight is critically important. Since we know that the metaphysical gives rise to the physical, or at least we presume as such, and that a triangle shape on a truss bridge, for example, is both the strongest and the most efficient use of physical material, demonstrating how the physical and non-physical are working together, we should take a closer look at this metaphysical triad in the history of esotericism and investigate how it has been linked to human psychology and the Triforce in particular. It is fairly well known that in the Hebrew alphabet, each letter corresponds to a specific numeric value. Assigning a numeric value to a letter, word, or phrase is known as gematria. If we take a look at the Triforce through the lens of gematria, something very interesting happens. Something which leads us directly back to the psyche. As we learned earlier, the Triforce consists of 3 separate triangles, or forces, which are unified into one. Even with this unification, however, we can clearly see there are 3 distinct parts. We can also see that a dark 4th triangle is the point where they reach unity. This could be interpreted as the physical or earthly form associated with the feminine energy in which the 3 metaphysical energies manifest. It should be noted that this doesn't mean that a Triforce of attributes will only manifest in the feminine physical form, but it does demonstrate the unity of opposites and reconciliation between the physical and the non-physical. The very term Triforce itself should clue us in on what is really happening here, namely that there are 3 main separate energy aspects or forces that must be reconciled or unified. When we consider the significance of the number 9 in gematria, since we have 3 distinct triangles here, we find something very interesting and quite fitting for this archetypal form. In gematria, the number 9 represents the completion of a cycle or the fulfillment of a quest. The number 9 is also the end result of all preceding numbers, 0 through 9 being all possible numbers. In esotericism, the Triforce stands as a symbol for mastery and perfection. There are 3 triads on the Kabbalistic tree of life in Jewish mysticism, just as there are 3 triads which are unified into one in the form of the Triforce that we see here. If we look even closer at this sacred symbol, we can see something quite interesting begin to take shape. If we count each point of each triangle, we get 9 points. In total, 3 triangles times 3 points equaling 9. If we account for the dark upside-down triangle, we can see there is an additional point which mirrors the apex of the Triforce. If we presume the point of the upside-down triangle represents the shadow or lower aspect of the apex, then something interesting begins to reveal itself. The pattern seen this way is curiously reminiscent of the Kabbalistic tree of life. I know this is nuts, and I don't know how this came to me, but it did. This is quite likely a coincidence, of course, but I cannot help at least entertain the possibility that the tree of life and the Triforce must somehow be comparable. Both stand as symbolic roadmaps for the development of the spiritual path and the attainment of the higher self. I haven't attempted to match all 10 Sephiroth from the Tree of Life with each point of the Triforce and its 3 distinct triangles and the 4th dark triangle, but I suspect this may be possible. What I have done, however, have mapped the top 3 Sephiroth with the Triforce. Starting with Binah on the lower left, this Sephiroth correlates directly with the feminine, and this is where Princess Zelda, right? This is where she resides. Binah represents an intuitive type of understanding. In the writings of the 1st century mystical work, the Sefer HaBahir, which translates to the Book of the Bright, it says this about Binah: "For you shall call understanding a mother." Where Binah is most certainly feminine, the Chokmah Sephiroth, known as Abba, or the Father, is decidedly masculine, and this is exactly the Triforce that Link inhabits. While I won't go into great detail from the Kabbalistic sense regarding how both Binah and Chokmah are interrelated as masculine and feminine aspects, I think the point has been clearly illustrated. The psychological and symbolic importance of the Triforce stands as a universally sacred symbol, which can be used as a roadmap for the human psyche and for nature in a similar way that the Kabbalistic Tree of Life is used. And Keter, which means the crown, is at the top since it represents that which is above the head or that which is above the mind of man, known as the most hidden of all hidden things. Keter is the final destination for the pillars of Chokmah, which is wisdom on the lower right, and Binah, understanding, positioned at the lower left. For upon the 2 pillars of understanding and wisdom does the realization of that which shall be unknowable reside. This combined symbolism between the Triforce and the top 3, or I should say final 3 Sephiroth, depending on your perspective, placed on top of this Triforce, or this triangle in this case, it reminds me of the Socratic paradoxical phrase, "I know that I know nothing." The seemingly endless battle between Link and Ganon is a common and repeating storyline because the crown, Keter, or ultimate power and understanding and knowledge, which Ganon is seeking in every game, of course, is, at the end of the day, it's unattainable. Ganon represents mankind's folly in his presumption that any of the previously mentioned ultimates may somehow be attainable in some way. He'll never attain these ultimates that he desires. And yet, in another sense, it is attainable in the human and physical realm, just not in the way Ganon seems to understand. There's still a surrender to the forces, right? You can use the force, but you can't control the force, right? That's kind of that's the paradox that Ganon doesn't understand. In case there was any question as to the universal relevance of the Triforce or equilateral triangle, I wanted to offer this Freemasonic emblem as another example of the 3 energetic aspects of the Triforce at work. Just like how the Triforce is organized in the Legend of Zelda, at the top with the top three Sephiroth, just in the same way the top three Sephiroth of Kabbalah are organized, or in a similar way at least. This Freemasonic emblem is yet another example of the unity of opposites of masculine and feminine working in harmony, along with the third aspect of the ultimate God or crown at the apex of this emblem. While it seems fairly clear to me that a Japanese developer of the Legend of Zelda series never directly intended to include elements from Jewish mysticism into these video games, I cannot help but make certain universal connections. What comes to the intuition and my mind specifically is that courage must come through understanding. This type of understanding refers to the intuition primarily. Understanding being the seat of the emotions, when we consider that courage refers to the heart and all that it can understand. The heart being at the epicenter of intuition and understanding, as well as courage. Next, we have wisdom. Wisdom personified by Princess Zelda, of course. While understanding and wisdom seem to be swapped when using this model, I think it's still an important connection worth discussing. Finally, we have the crown, or Keter, which represents power or ultimate knowing. In the Kabbalistic and ultimate sense of our reality, it seems that the crown or ultimate knowing or power are indeed elusive and unattainable by those other than the Creator. This explains why Ganon's quest for power is always doomed to fail. It also explains why the battle for Hyrule seems to go on endlessly through many different games in the Legend of Zelda series, repeating what is essentially the same scenario over and over again. And it is because the crown, or ultimate knowing and power, is unattainable. It represents the endless quest of the ages for mystics, seekers, and adventurers. After all, it's not the destination which is so compelling in life, but rather it is the journey. In closing, there are many ways to explore the triad or threefold existence of our metaphysical reality. The Freemasonic 33rd degree, the Holy Trinity, the third eye in Hinduism. There's so many. These are just a few of the well-known examples which recognize or attempt to map this curious pattern of three which eternally manifests throughout nature and within ourselves. The Legend of Zelda series and the use of the Triforce seems as elegant an expression as any of the aforementioned mystical triadic explorations. It seems that the mysticism embedded into the Legend of Zelda series is rather inescapable and is part of the programming of the human unconscious desire for ultimate understanding. It is quite evident to me that this sacred metaphysical number 3 points us back to ourselves and the inner dimensions of the human psyche time and time again across cultures. Such an obvious signal as the triad coming about from nature, mathematics, science, and within ourselves seems worthy of our sincere attention and contemplation. There is a lot more to be said and inspected closer within the land of Hyrule and Lorule alike. I expect sometime in the future I will return to this game series with a somewhat different approach. This may occur after I have another playthrough of one of my favorite Legend of Zelda games, of course. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and to subscribe. And if you want to support my work and get early access to all of my other video series that aren't on YouTube yet, please visit my members website at ReInstallPaul.com. Thanks, and I will see you on the next video.